Clinic this morning. Just a little bit of context on my role at Mayo, and I am fully cognizant that everyone in this room has a close association with Mayo. Probably first and foremost as a patient, or as an employee, or the spouse of a patient, or a community member. This is going to be a 50,000-foot view of Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic is in our face every day as members of this group of people in a variety of different ways. But it's going to step back a little bit and talk about the big picture of Mayo. And candidly, hopefully the timing is good given this week's airing of the Mayo Clinic film, which they too took that kind of broad bird's eye view of Mayo Clinic. I've been fortunate to work at Mayo Clinic first starting in 1986. I was the first intern in the Division of Communications. Back when they were opening Jacksonville and Scottsdale, they needed a little more help, and for them at that time took a bold step of hiring an intern in the Division of Communications. I worked for 3 months in the Division of Communications, and then I actually worked for 2 years here in Rochester at a magazine called Exhibitor Magazine, which covers the trade show industry. I went to Minneapolis to what I viewed as my lifelong dream of working for Dave Mona, who is a public relations professional who does support for both sports and the arts. I got to a PR agency and realized I didn't like really being at a PR agency. And Mayo Clinic called me back and said, at the time when the person who was leaving to start the public relations function at Mayo Clinic in Arizona, so they needed a little more help. I've done a variety of things over 29 years. I started as a media relations, marketing, communications specialist on that team. I actually was part of the group that helped establish Mayo Clinic Health System back in the day. I kind of rose my hand and said, I went to Luther, I'm interested in Decorah, you're about to announce an affiliation with a practice in Decorah, would you be interested in working on that? I said yes. That turned into announcing all of the affiliations and acquisitions of the Mayo Clinic Health System over the course of about 6 or 7 years. Came back to Mayo Clinic work and helped support the National and International Media Relations Initiative. We had never done that before as an organization, been very proactive in our media relations activities. Then took a little bit of time and then started working on that Mayo Clinic Health Policy Center. We convene people around the country to offer ideas about what healthcare should look like in the future, leading up to the development of the Affordable Care Act. So I served as the managing director of that. I led what is called the Division of External Relations, which is media relations, research, public affairs, basically the public relations function of Mayo, including social media. And then was asked to be the first chief of staff for our president and CEO. So we're a very large organization with no chief of staff function. Everything fell on the executive assistant of the president and CEO. How should that person spend their time? How do they respond to all that's coming at them? And then we extended that to the other vice presidents in the other locations, and then was asked to serve as the chair of our Department of Public Affairs. And I'll get into a little bit more of that a little bit later. So for us as an organization, hopefully this resonates with you, but we have a singular primary value at Mayo Clinic, that the needs of the patients come first. That has really guided us throughout our entire history in every one of our locations. Some people view it as a little bit of, okay, it sounds too good to be true, but literally around the leadership table, the question is asked when the issues get really sticky, what's in the best interest of the patient? And candidly, that usually trumps all of the different points of view that are sitting out there. Our vision as an organization is to ensure that we provide for patients that unparalleled experience as a most trusted partner for them and their families in their healthcare experience. There are 8 core values of our organization that really are fundamental to everything that we do. You can see them there: respect, integrity, compassion, healing, innovation, excellence, teamwork, and stewardship. you see those values lived out really in everything that we do, and they drive everything that we are about. I would offer, for me personally, the greatest one is the issue of respect. Respect for the patient and respect for one another. And as times get more and more turbulent in our industry, in our society, I think that issue of respect for one another is really what resonates and stands out. You hear a lot about the Mayo brothers at Mayo Clinic. You hear a lot, and you saw a lot in the film, about the founders of the organization, especially the Sisters of St. Francis. I think one of the most powerful things that really came to life in the documentary film, which we'll talk more about in a little bit, are the founders' values of our organization, including the Sisters of St. Francis. This was a real duh moment for me. 29 years in at Mayo, we're traveling around the country talking about the film to all kinds of audiences, and it kind of just struck me that Mayo Clinic, unlike other organizations, has the Sisters of St. Francis and the values of the sisters. No other organization really has that. These were really visionary people, which you saw hopefully brought to life in the film and in other ways. But just this simple phrase that the best interest of the patient is the only interest to be considered, and really nothing else matters. This is brought to life in this singular patient story. It's about 4 minutes long, so brace yourself on the length. But it really brings to life what drives us as an organization and what Mayo Clinic can mean to patients everywhere.
Isaac is the kind of person who's so energetic, and he loves doing things with his children, and he loves being outdoors, and just, he's very adventurous and exciting. And I think that's part of why I fell in love with him to begin with.
My name is Isaac Garcia. I'm 38 years old, and I live in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. I'm married to Sarah Garcia, and we've been married for 15 years. In late 2014, I started having a dull pain in my groin, and I was referred to a urologist by my local primary care doctor, which led to a misdiagnosis and an unneeded surgery, and it ended up delaying me finding out the real problem. So then I was referred to an orthopedic specialist here in Albuquerque, and the orthopedic specialist thought, since I rode dirt bikes a lot, that I probably damaged something in a crash, and it was nothing big, it was tendonitis. Let's get an MRI and we'll see what's in there, and it's not going to be a big deal.
So we went to see the doctor, and he came in and said, I have bad news for you. You look like what's going on is a malignant tumor in your bone. You need to see an orthopedic oncologist. My secretary will give you information. And he left the room.
My wife and I were just floored and cried a lot. It was not good news, you know. It was horrifying news, actually.
I was very afraid that a diagnosis of bone cancer meant he wouldn't be here. We drove all around that day trying to get in to see an orthopedic oncologist. The wait times were over 6 weeks or more to even speak to a doctor. So I called my boss because I wasn't in any position to go to work the next day. And he told me, don't give up. There's other places. Go wherever you have to go. So I Googled best bone cancer doctor, and Mayo Hospital came up.
So my wife contacted the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, and they told us to fax my MRI report and some of my information to them, and they would get back to us. And that was on a Monday, and they called back the next day on that Tuesday and said, be here Friday.
After we completed all of the tests and investigations and performed a biopsy, the diagnosis was a chondrosarcoma, the malignant bone tumor involving a very challenging, difficult location, and that was his hip socket. A chondrosarcoma is a purely surgical problem. There's no medical, any other treatment options available for it. And the surgical treatment for this, for him, was to remove his entire hip joint, the ball and the socket joint. Fortunately, we didn't have to remove any of the important muscles around his hip, but that presents a difficult problem to reconstruct for him.
And there was basically 3 options, and one of them was just removal, and you don't put anything back in, so they remove your hip socket and the top of your femur, and they don't put anything back in. It's called a flail hip. And then the other one was to use the pelvic bone from a cadaver, and they, make it fit and hope that it takes. Dr. Beauchamp really didn't like that idea either. He said that the best thing is a 3D printed titanium implant.
The subsequent treatment of removing the hip joint has become almost the holy grail of orthopedic oncology. We can do it better than we've been doing before, to be able to do the resection, to print the model, to design an implant. The technology is there.
Yeah, Dr. Beauchamp came out to tell us that it was a home run, is the words he used to describe the surgery. He said, I got all of it. It's clean margins, I got it all. The cancer's gone.
Because of the Mayo Clinic, I'm back, back to living a normal, good life. I just have a whole new appreciation for all the little things that you usually take for granted. They all mean a lot now. I have a whole new appreciation for life.
I would like to tell Dr. Beauchamp, thank you so much to make such a huge impact in my husband's life. And because of that, my life and my kids, by using this incredible technology that isn't everywhere else, he offered such a good outcome. He did such a good job. I would tell him thank you.
Just a couple things kind of stand out for that story. The amazing work that Mayo Clinic does using technology and the latest, but more importantly, how Mayo Clinic cares for patients at probably the most vulnerable moments in their life. We all know that. Sometimes it's important for us to remember that. For us as an organization, one of the things that's occurred over the last several years is we've moved much more to an integrated organization across the entirety of the Mayo Clinic. We're all very familiar with what occurs and transpires in Rochester, and we've grown and have seen the growth of the Mayo Clinic here. But even the growth that's occurring both on our Florida campus and Phoenix Scottsdale is important to note. And I think it's really the result of Mayo Clinic moving to a single operating plan and a single operating strategy as an organization. Both Jacksonville and Phoenix have really markedly increased the capability of their staff, being destinations for serious and complex care in their regions. The other thing I would note, and you've seen a lot of this over the course of the last several months, is significant integration of Mayo Clinic and Mayo Clinic Health System in the Upper Midwest. Rural healthcare is a significant challenge. Probably the biggest challenge we face in rural healthcare is recruitment of providers to these locations. And how do we take the right level of expertise from Mayo Clinic and bring it to the Mayo Clinic Health System locations throughout the Upper Midwest, and really continue to ensure that we thrive as an organization, rooted in our mission, but also do what's necessary to succeed financially. For us as an organization, we see patients from all 50 states and from 137 countries around the world. You see on this map some of the locations of those kind of primary international locations. This is also one of the things you might not necessarily immediately remember and recognize. If you ask who are Mayo Clinic's primary competitors, they're primarily Johns Hopkins, Cleveland Clinic, but the bulk of their patients are regional patients coming from a metropolitan area. Mayo Clinic is an organization, Rochester, about 115 to 120,000 people. How do we ensure that we're successful across the entirety of the United States, across the Upper Midwest, in attracting those patients for serious to complex care? We as an organization could not survive simply serving the patients, obviously, of this community. So we truly have that national and international footprint. And it's that reality that drives things like the Gade expansion, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So you heard about the headlines, the Gade expansion. Why are we doing it? First, it is the result of a relationship of a grateful patient who happens to be a developer in Singapore who's intrigued by the possibilities of what this might be and the need it might meet. This expansion was actually part of the original drawings and the concept for the Gade building, to go to 30 stories in this space. Importantly, this will afford us the opportunity to add 4 floors of clinical space to meet some of our primary service areas, including cancer, cardiology, and others. But it also will meet a need that our patients often express for this level of hotel in our community. You might sit back and say, really? Are they asking for that? They absolutely are asking for that and have been asking it for an extended period of time. So this will be premium space hotel, which actually is not currently available in the state of Minnesota or in our community, and it will amount to about 2% of the hotel rooms in Rochester. We as an organization actually also have, you might not know it, but we actually own other hotel property that meets a different segment of the population. It's over behind the Dan Abraham Healthy Living Center, a couple of hotel properties, and we are very supportive of an array of hotels. So this project, while this is a concept rendering, we anticipate it won't look exactly like this, but when it ultimately opens in 2022 or 2023, one of the things that really will be unique about this space is the amazing vistas it's going to offer. And we also want this space to be available for the community for events as they occur. The Mayo Clinic Care Network. This is something that built up over the course of the last 8 to 10 years as well. While other organizations were purchasing clinics and hospitals around the country, Mayo Clinic formed the Mayo Clinic Care Network. Why did we do that? It's a subscription-based model where providers and administrators can access the expertise of Mayo Clinic for a fee, plus it permits us to build a relationship with these providers around the country. They access expertise they would never, ever else have that access to. It's also international locations, as you can see. It's been quite successful. One of the realities of it, if we were to acquire these facilities, the capital required would be off the charts and we wouldn't be able to do it. And if we acquired a facility, we also purchase everything associated with that facility, as Dr. Noseworthy likes to say, including the asbestos. It actually permits us to have a relationship and without all of what comes with it. You see in your chairs and at your tables, Mayo Clinic by the numbers. Just a couple of things I just would like to point out relative to this. Mayo Clinic as an organization contributes about $28 billion to the national economy. Mayo Clinic is the largest provider of Medicare services in the United States, and we contribute, with the work associated with Mayo, 167,000 jobs, including 92,000 in Minnesota. We're the largest private employer, and we generate $3.9 billion of public tax revenue, and we contribute through charity care donations, research and education, $952 million. 4,700 physicians and scientists, 63,000 staff, and we are a non-profit organization. Everything we earn goes back into the organization. We're driven by, as I mentioned earlier, this singular strategic plan for the organization. 2 primary outcomes: how to ensure highest value care and being the most trusted and affordable, but at the same time, while we're very mission driven, how do we achieve mission advancing financial performance? And we do it in 4 primary goals. We're continuing to find ways to transform the practice of medicine in how it's delivered. How do we achieve operational excellence, primarily through operational efficiency? How do we generate demand for serious to complex care? The story of Isaac is a really significant example of many stories and patients we serve. Patients not being able to get their needs met in other locations, have their needs met at Mayo because of our expertise, the number of cases we see in a particular area, and the integration of technology. And then finally, how do we best invest in talent and technology so we can attract the best and brightest, both short and long term? If I could count the number of times I've been asked this question, what is the impact of the leadership transition? Usually that it's on you. So we'll talk a little bit about the leadership transition. I've had an opportunity to work with Dr. Noseworthy closely for the entirety of his time at Mayo. He's an incredible values-driven leader. His dad was a pastor. Humanity is at his core. He's a great person, a great innovator, driven by excellence. I will put him personally as one of the great leaders of Mayo in all time. It'll be hard when he transitions because he's done so many things for Mayo. I know Jean-Rico Ferrugia very well. Dr. Ferrugia is a gastroenterologist. He spent more than 25 years here in Rochester and now 4 years leading Mayo Clinic in Florida. Equally committed to the values of the organization, equally driven by excellence. They are great people, both of them. Dr. Ferrugia is very much interested in taking Mayo Clinic now to that next level. And what does that next level mean? I would say that Mayo as an organization is increasingly going to need to be successful in the digital space and in the international front while continuing to sustain all that it's currently doing. A lot on the plate. Dr. Ferrugia will take the role officially January 1. He's started his transition now. He's spending time here. He knows Mayo very well. And a couple things to note. I mean, there's a single operating plan. While he will put his stamp on it, it's not like that plan goes away. That plan is sustained for the entirety of the organization. And the other good thing about transitions at Mayo, I believe, is that people come from within. So there's lots of ample time to build up leaders who really know and understand the value of the organization. I'll talk just briefly about our department, the Department of Public Affairs at Mayo. We further the objectives in a variety of ways, but in 5 primary ways. Our responsibility as a group is really to drive awareness and influence perceptions of Mayo Clinic, to deliver targeted demand and enhance the revenue of the organization, both in clinical services and in philanthropy, to honor, protect, and strengthen the reputation of Mayo Clinic, and on days when CNN airs stories like they aired a couple weeks ago, we are at the fulcrum of that reality. A big part of what we do is also engage our staff fully in the mission of the organization, and we're there to help strengthen operational excellence. You see some of the ways we do it. We have about 400 staff in our department in 4 primary functions. The brand strategy is, what do people perceive Mayo Clinic to be? Everybody, candidly, has very favorable feelings toward Mayo, but they believe something different each time. We want to ensure that they think about Mayo Clinic for serious and complex care. So the brand strategy and the creative studio that executes it is responsible for that. Communications has been the bedrock of what we've done historically to strengthen the culture of Mayo, and primarily through earned media, but more recently, we've done a lot of work in social media, extending that word of mouth. Our marketing function when I joined Mayo in 1989 was 1 person doing market research. We now have 45 professionals who are very strong in consumer marketing, who are really generating, primarily through digital, that demand for Mayo Clinic services that permits us to sustain our mission. And we have a very active community and government engagement team that looks out for our state and federal, local kind of government activities, and also how do we best engage our communities. And building off of our experience in I-90, I can tell you that we're going to invest more fully in this area, both in expertise and in dollars. You see some of the ways this plays out over time in the various work that we do. Marketing includes our sports sponsorships. You see us very visible with groups like the Minnesota Lynx and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Those are very strategic in our efforts to generate demand for sports medicine services, but also to position us the right way with the right audiences. I'll talk a little bit about the documentary.
A visionary approach to medicine. The needs of the patient come first. Was invented over 120 years ago.
I couldn't have asked for anything better for her.
I've got another 25, 30 years in front of me for sure. Faith, hope, and science, those two things are absolutely critical.
You are never alone in your efforts to find an answer to that patient's problem.
Ken Burns presents The Mayo Clinic, Tuesday, September 25th at 9, 8 Central, only on PBS.
You want to make sure that the story is a good one, but how could this not be a good one? That a guy accidentally ends up here as part of, service to the Union Army. His wife says, enough, we're staying here. There's a tornado. He meets some nuns there. All of a sudden they've got a hospital, and you wake up a century plus later and it's the greatest place on earth.
Ken and his associates have undertaken the extraordinary challenge of sharing our 150-year story, highlighting our values, our systems, our staff, our work, and the seriously ill patients who seek our help.
You begin to suspect with the complicated, wonderful, inspirational story of the Mayo Clinic that you might be getting at something that could be said to be fundamentally or uniquely American. And I think that's what we're looking for in human beings and institutions and stories that we tell. What is it that's different about this? What does it say about who we are, where we've been, and I think perhaps most importantly, where we're going?
This film is a vivid counterpoint to the healthcare system many Americans currently experience, and a treasured example of what's possible when committed professionals, grounded in common values, devote their lives to the vocation of serving others.
So just a couple things on this. This started in 2011. Dr. Noseworthy was invited to the Twin Cities for a luncheon when Ken Burns was promoting the 10th inning. He relates the story. I'm not sure it's entirely true. He got to the table. His name tag was 3 chairs away from Ken's. He moved the name tag next to Ken's and started a conversation. He knew exactly what he was doing. I think Ken knew exactly what Dr. Noseworthy was doing. But they developed a rapport and a relationship. The critical moment was about 2 years into the conversation when Dr. Noseworthy said to Ken, I don't think maybe the story of Mayo Clinic can be told. That was a turning point. 3.5 years, over 900 hours of tape, boiled down into an hour and 52 minutes. The crew that did this, the Ewers brothers, Christopher Lauren, Eric Ewers, and Julie Kaufman, the producer, working very closely with Ken, were incredible. We had no journalistic control. We had no control of this, but we developed a very good relationship. Just an honor to be part of this. You see some of the scenes, one of the kind of true, the last week to 10 days, we've crisscrossed the country. You saw some premiere events in Rochester. We traveled to Phoenix. We were in Jacksonville, Washington, D.C., and New York. Ken's enthusiasm for this project continues to grow. There's opportunity for us to use this long term, especially in Washington, around conversation about what the future of healthcare should look like. Destination Medical Center. This is obviously high visibility. You've seen the renderings. In some ways, the renderings are probably the biggest challenge, right? What will it ultimately look like? many different components of this. The closest one to Zumbro is Discovery Square. I would just offer that Destination Medical Center over 20 years is a $5.6 billion investment, $3.5 billion from Mayo, and $585 million from Minnesota. And it will generate a significant amount of revenue for the state of Minnesota, about $2.2 billion in tax revenue. Discovery Square is a 16-block sub-district. It's really a place where we will accelerate medical innovation. A lot of it's happening already. University of Minnesota will take presence in there, along with several startup companies associated with regenerative medicine and advanced diagnostics. You see the building occurring just across our street every day. The lower right is the one, the Discovery Square Apartments. On the lower left is Urban on First, across from Pasquale's Pizza. Super Bowl 52, just touch on this. This was kind of a unique community engagement effort for us. Why is Mayo Clinic sponsoring the Super Bowl? First, we want to be a good citizen of the state of Minnesota and ensure Minnesota's ultimate success. It was really an opportunity for us as an organization to more fully engage our staff in the lower right, to have people be part of the excitement, but to also contribute our expertise and contribute to our community. In the lower left is Mayo Clinic being part of something called First and Future, where our physicians and scientists were part of the judging panel about football safety overall. In the upper right, we contributed dollars and our expertise around health, wellness, and nutrition as part of the Legacy program. The Super Bowl host committee had to give back $100 million in profits to the state of Minnesota. We were an integral part of that, and actually dollars were contributed to the community of Rochester as part of that. And we actually partnered with the Sisters of St. Francis in the upper middle on the issue of human trafficking, so that we gave back to the state of Minnesota in that. A huge issue for us is this issue of affordable housing in our community. If you dial back the clock 8 years, we contributed, or 10, to First Homes, which was a highly successful initiative. We're working very closely now on this issue with a variety of partners, and really are working to ensure that we have a long-term sustainable solution on the issue of affordable housing. And we give on an annual basis to about 300 nonprofits across southern Minnesota.
Mayo Clinic, at its heart, is a humanitarian organization. Our mission extends beyond our walls to create strong, vibrant, and healthy communities where our friends and neighbors can live with health and dignity.
Mayo's pledge to its community started in the aftermath of tragedy, the 1883 tornado that nearly destroyed Rochester. Rising from this devastation, St. Mary's Hospital was built, and Rochester survived and prospered.
Rochester and Mayo really grown together as communities, as partners in building a great place to live, to work, and for patients to come from all over the world. We're really proud of our partnership with Rochester, as now reflected in the Destination Medical Center.
Every year, more than 1 million people come to Mayo Clinic for care. But Mayo's care extends beyond our doors. Last year, Mayo Clinic supported 300 nonprofit organizations across southern Minnesota and provided over $1 billion in charity care, donations, research, and education to the broader community, including the Coalition for Rochester Area Housing. The coalition represents a partnership between the City of Rochester, Olmsted County, and Mayo Clinic to bring much-needed affordable and workforce housing to the Rochester area.
Mayo has been a tremendous corporate citizen in the city of Rochester for decades, and particularly in housing. The house we're standing in here right now is a project of First Homes, and this is the kind of project that the Mayo contribution, the $4 million over 2 years, is going to assist us with going forward. Mayo's generosity is essential for the future of us addressing this issue in the community.
The first project approved by the Rochester Area Housing Coalition is the Jeremiah program. It's one of Minnesota's most successful programs to move families from poverty to prosperity and provides a safe and affordable place to live.
Jeremiah program allows single moms to obtain a career track college education. We provide on-site early childhood education for their children, life skills and empowerment training. We're deeply grateful to the Mayo Clinic for their support in recognizing the importance of the Jeremiah program in the Rochester area.
If you think about the Mayo Clinic, first of all, it's a community partner and always has been. And so I would ask you to think about Minnesota without the Mayo, and you can't. And as a matter of fact, you think about the Mayo as probably the crown jewel of the world's healthcare institutions. And how lucky are we to have it here in Minnesota?
Challenges we face in our communities are increasingly complex and interdependent. Mayo Clinic approaches these challenges using the philosophy of our founders, a belief that we can achieve more through a union of forces. The power of teamwork and collaboration is evident in the progress we have made in our great state, a state we are proud to call home.
So Tuesday night was a big night for Mayo. The documentary aired, and this film was part of Mayo receiving the Legacy Award at the Minnesota Business Partnership in the Twin Cities for its years of service. So thanks for your attention. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'm looking at your little handout here. The growth. Well, you have Rochester at 35,000 plus, Arizona at 6,600, Florida at 5,800. Now, with the DMC, what do you see the growth in those other two locations?
They're going to continue to invest in Florida and Arizona. You may have seen there was a significant building. There's going to be a $600 million investment in the Phoenix campus in Arizona. And I don't know the exact number, I can't remember it off the top of my head, in Florida. Not at that magnitude because they've done investment. They're going to continue to invest in both of those. We will continue to invest in both of those locations. Great population potential in both markets because they're more larger metropolitan areas. Greater challenge on the payer side. It's a more difficult market. So how do you balance all that? Yeah.
Chris, for people who didn't see the documentary, is it going to be available on demand in any way?
Yes, you actually can go to pbs.org right now. You can go to pbs.org and view it. It's there for 2 weeks, and then it'll be available. You can also order DVDs through Twin Cities Public Television now, and then it'll be on Amazon streaming post that 2-week period. And you probably maybe saw in the back of the book, in the back of the room, there is a companion book that has been published that's available at the Mayo Clinic stores or wherever books are sold. Oh. No, you're not on the air, Paul. Jim.
Isn't there a DVD?
Yes. Yeah, you can get it. You can order it through Twin Cities Public Television.
Would you say something about the connection with the nursing program through Luther College?
Well, yes, I will. Yes. So the nursing program at Luther is a vital. So I have a dual role here. I'll admit that. I'm about to go into the Regents of Luther. And have my first meeting next weekend, which I'm excited about. And I'm an alumnus of Luther and a parent of a Luther. We're proud parents of Meredith, who's sitting right here as a nursing student. I would offer that it's that type of program that as Mayo Clinic, we really need to do more and more of, because it permits us to identify highly capable future staff of Mayo Clinic. It gives students at Luther a great hands-on learning experience that they otherwise wouldn't have. Meredith can speak to this, but 1 week into her clinical, she was describing cases that were absolutely amazing, that she was part and experiencing, but also meeting the highly capable, talented staff of Mayo Clinic that give her a guide for what she wants to be in her career, which all Luther nursing students, I believe, experience. And the final thing I would just offer, when I talk to friends in nursing administration, when they're doing an interview, and the two candidates are both equal, if they're a Luther person, it goes to the Luther person, because they know the quality of the program and the education. Thanks, everyone.